Dr. Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the monitoring screens inside Europa Station, the small research base, built beneath the icy surface of Jupiter's moon, had been her home for the past 8 months. Most days were the same, checking sensor readings, analyzing space radiation, and documenting the occasional interesting asteroid. But today was different. At first, she thought the strange energy readings were a malfunction. 3 distinct signatures had appeared at the edge of their solar system, moving in a way that defied natural physics. They weren't asteroids, comets, or any known space phenomena. "Hey Mike, can you come look at this?" She called to her colleague, who was preparing his morning coffee in their small break room. Mike Wallace, the station's technical expert, walked over with his steaming cup. "What's up, Sarah?" "These readings, they appeared about 20 minutes ago. They're not natural." She pointed to the 3 blips on her screen, which were now moving in a perfect formation. Mike spilled some coffee on his shirt as he leaned forward. "That's impossible. Those objects just changed direction by 90 degrees without slowing down." Sarah nodded, her heart beating faster. "I know. And look at their energy output. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." As they watched, their long-range sensors picked up a sudden burst of unknown radiation from the objects. Sarah quickly adjusted their receivers, trying to capture any data she could. That's when they heard it, a transmission, clear as day, coming through their speakers. The language was unlike anything they had ever heard before, but thanks to the station's advanced AI translation systems, text began appearing on their screen. "Scout Squadron Delta to Imperial Command. Solar System survey complete. Primary inhabited planet shows signs of early space exploration. Primitive weapon systems detected. Standard subjugation protocols recommended." A different voice responded. "Acknowledged, Squadron Delta. Maintain observation distance. Invasion fleet will arrive within 3 stellar cycles." Mike's coffee cup crashed to the floor. "Sarah, we need to alert Earth right now." Sarah was already typing furiously at her console, establishing a secure connection to the global space defense network. "Listen to how they're talking about us," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Like we're just another target. How many worlds do you think they've conquered?" Mike asked, staring at the alien ship's energy signatures. "Based on how routine this sounds to them, probably thousands." Sarah finished encrypting her message and hit send. "But they're making a big mistake." "What's that?" "They think we're primitive just because we're not out there conquering other worlds like them." She smiled grimly as she received confirmation that her alert had reached Earth. "They have no idea what humanity is capable of when we're threatened." The next few hours were a blur of activity. More transmissions were intercepted, translated, and sent to Earth. The alien ships maintained their position, apparently confident that they were undetected by the primitive humans. Little did they know that Europa Station was just one of dozens of advanced monitoring posts humanity had secretly built throughout the solar system. While the rest of the world went about their daily lives, a hidden network of scientists, military strategists, and leaders began to implement plans that had existed for decades. Plans created for the day when humanity would face its first hostile alien contact. As Sarah watched the alien ships through their sensors, she thought about how humanity had always imagined this moment. In movies and books, first contact was either peaceful cooperation or immediate war. But this calculated, almost bureaucratic approach to conquest somehow seemed worse. The Galactic Empire had marked Earth for subjugation, seeing only what humanity had chosen to show the universe. They would soon learn their mistake. They would learn it the hard way. 3 days after Europa Station's discovery, a massive ship emerged from hyperspace just beyond the moon's orbit. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, nearly 5 miles long, with smooth curves that seemed to glow with a faint purple light. This was the Empire's diplomatic vessel, though its size made its true purpose clear: intimidation. General James Roberts stood in the United Nations Emergency Command Center, surrounded by screens showing the alien ship from different angles. Next to him, Dr. Emily Patil adjusted her glasses as she studied the incoming transmission data. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," she said. "It's their standard message of conquest, just like we intercepted from their earlier communications." The general nodded. "Let them finish their speech. Then we'll give them our response." On screens around the world, the alien transmission began playing. A tall, humanoid figure appeared, purple-skinned with 4 eyes and elaborate gold markings on its face. When it spoke, Earth's quantum computers instantly translated its words into all human languages. "People of Earth," the alien ambassador said, "you have been chosen to join the Galactic Empire. Your technology levels indicate you are ready for uplift into our civilization. You have 2 planetary rotations to surrender your world's governance to Imperial control. Resistance will result in immediate military action. Compliance will be rewarded with access to Imperial technology and protection." The ambassador smiled, showing teeth that looked almost like crystals. "Be honored. Few worlds receive such a generous offer." In the command center, General Roberts looked at the leaders gathered from around the world. They all nodded. It was time. Dr. Patel pressed a series of commands into her console. "Quantum transmitters ready, sir. All 247 locations are synchronized." "Send it," the general ordered. Across the globe, hidden transmitters activated simultaneously. From underground bases in every continent, from secret facilities deep in the oceans, and from cloaked satellites in orbit, humanity sent their response. It was just 7 words, broadcast in perfect galactic standard. "We know you're coming. We suggest you don't." On the main screen, they watched the ambassador's 4 eyes blink in surprise. The transmission had caught them off guard, not just its content, but the fact that it was in their own language, sent through their own communication protocols. "How dare these primitives?" one of the alien officers began, before the ambassador silenced them with a raised hand. "Interesting," the ambassador said. "You understand our language. Perhaps you are more developed than we initially thought." Their crystal teeth gleamed again. "But surely you don't believe you can resist the Empire. We have conquered thousands of worlds. Your species has barely reached its own moon." The command center remained silent. They didn't need to say anything more. The warning had been delivered. "Their ship is sending signals back to their fleet," Dr. Peddle reported. They're laughing, sir. They think we're bluffing." General Roberts allowed himself a small smile. "Perfect. Let them think that." The massive alien ship turned gracefully in space and disappeared in a flash of purple light, returning to the invasion fleet that waited at the edge of the solar system. They had dismissed humanity's warning as the empty threats of a primitive species. In the command center, Dr. Patel turned to the general. "Should we begin activating the defense systems?" "Not yet," he replied. "Let them come a bit closer first. After all, we've spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Might as well make it count." Around the world, hidden facilities hummed with power as humanity quietly readied itself for the coming storm. The Empire thought they were dealing with simple primitives. They would soon learn that humanity's apparent technological gap wasn't from lack of ability. It was by choice. Admiral Karakun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Dominance, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. His fleet of 500 warships moved in perfect formation behind him, their purple hulls gleaming in the light of the primitive world's sun. "Status report," he commanded, his 4 eyes narrowing as they studied the blue planet. "No defensive systems detected, Admiral," his sensor officer reported. "Their satellites appear to be simple communication devices. Their space stations are primitive at best. Their military vessels, still confined to their planet's surface, sir. No movement. Their aircraft remain grounded." Admiral Exarchon frowned. After their bold warning message, he had expected some kind of resistance. But the humans were just going about their daily lives. Their cities were lit up, their vehicles moved normally, and their broadcasting stations continued showing their entertainment programs. Perhaps they realized resistance was futile, his second-in-command suggested. Perhaps, but something felt wrong. In his 300 years of conquering worlds for the Empire, he had never seen a species just ignore an incoming invasion fleet. "Sir," the communication officer called out, "we're receiving signals from their media networks. Would you like to see? Display them." Multiple screens lit up around the bridge, showing scenes from Earth, a sports game in a place called Brazil, a news report about the weather in Japan, a cooking show in France. It was as if the humans didn't even care that their world was about to be conquered. "This makes no sense," Admiral Khan muttered. "They warned us not to come, but now they do nothing." The scouting reports did say they were an irrational species, his second-in-command reminded him. The Admiral walked closer to the main screen. They were now close enough to see the continents clearly. "Scan their military bases again." "Still no activity, sir. Their weapons remain powered down. Their missiles are in their silos. Their ships are in their ports." "And their leaders?" "Meeting in their United Nations building, apparently discussing trade policies." Admiral Khan felt a chill run down his spine, though he couldn't explain why. His fleet was the most powerful invasion force in this sector of the galaxy. These humans had barely mastered nuclear fusion. Their most advanced ships couldn't even reach their own system's outer planets. Yet, "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted his thoughts, "we're approaching optimal invasion range. Should we begin deployment?" The Admiral stared at Earth for a long moment. That warning message had been perfect, not just the language, but the transmission method, the encryption. How had they managed that? "Sir, deploy the fleet," he ordered finally, "but maintain shields at maximum. Something's not right here." The invasion fleet spread out in attack formation, 500 of the Empire's finest warships preparing to subjugate yet another primitive world. Their weapons powered up, their troop carriers ready to launch. On Earth, in homes and offices and streets, humans continued their normal routines. But deep underground, in secret bases and hidden facilities, men and women sat at advanced control stations, watching the alien fleet's every move. In the UN Command Center, General Roberts checked his watch. "They're almost in position," he said calmly. Dr. Patel nodded, her fingers hovering over her console. "All systems are ready, just waiting for them to cross the line." The general smiled. "Let's show them why we didn't bother with traditional defenses." Above them, Admiral Khan was about to give the order to begin the invasion. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to learn why humanity's warning had been so brief. They hadn't needed to say more. Actions would speak louder than words. Admiral Khan was about to give the invasion order when his tactical officer suddenly screamed. "Admiral, energy signatures. They're everywhere." All around Earth, thousands of satellites that had appeared dormant suddenly transformed. Panels shifted, revealing weapons unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. What they had dismissed as primitive communication devices were actually a network of advanced defense platforms. "Impossible," Khan whispered as his sensors went crazy. In the UN Command Center, General Roberts nodded to Dr. Patel. "Light them up." She pressed a sequence of commands, and 50 years of human preparation came to life. The quantum-entangled weapon platforms, disguised as normal satellites, activated simultaneously. There was no beam of light, no visible projectile, just pure quantum disruption. The first Imperial ship simply disappeared. Not exploded, not destroyed. It vanished, its quantum structure scattered across multiple dimensions. "What's happening?" Admiral Khan demanded as a second ship vanished, then a third. "How are they doing this?" "Their weapons. There's nothing to detect." "Sir, our shields are useless," his defense officer reported. "Whatever they're using, it's not energy or matter. It's something else." In the command center, Dr. Patel explained to the gathered world leaders. We never tried to copy alien technology. We knew we'd always be behind. Instead, we developed our own path. Quantum mechanics, dimensional physics, things the Empire never explored because they were too focused on traditional energy weapons. On the main screen, they watched as more Imperial ships vanished. The mighty invasion fleet was being taken apart piece by piece, and they still hadn't figured out how. Launch fighters. Admiral Exarchon ordered desperately, "Begin the invasion now." But as his fighter craft deployed, something else happened. The oceans of Earth began to churn. Massive doors opened in the seafloor, and human ships emerged, vessels that had been hidden underwater for decades. They were smaller than the Imperial ships, but covered in strange patterns that seemed to bend light around them. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "the human vessels, we can't lock weapons on them. Our targeting systems can't make sense of their hulls." The human ships, using gravimetric drives reverse-engineered from a different alien species the Empire had never encountered, moved with impossible agility. They weren't trying to match the Empire's technology. They were using something completely different. More surprises awaited. The dark side of the moon suddenly lit up as hidden bases activated. Weapons platforms emerged from crater floors. Human ships appeared from secret hangars, their hulls made of materials that Imperial sensors couldn't properly detect. In his flagship, Admiral Exarchon watched in horror as his invasion force was systematically dismantled. Every technique, every technology they used was countered by something they'd never seen before. It wasn't just that humanity had prepared. They had prepared in ways the Empire had never imagined possible. "Sir," his second-in-command said quietly, "we've lost a third of the fleet. We need to retreat." "How?" Tarkhan demanded. "How did they do this? They were supposed to be primitive." In the command center, General Roberts watched the Imperial fleet's formation break apart. "Send the next signal," he ordered. Dr. Patel transmitted their message to the remaining Imperial ships. "This was your only warning. Leave now, or we'll demonstrate what our actual weapons can do." These were just our defensive systems. The Empire had arrived expecting to find a primitive civilization. Instead, they found a humanity that had spent half a century preparing for this exact moment, developing technologies in secret that the Empire had never even considered possible. The invasion had failed before it even began, and the Empire was about to learn that humanity was just getting started. Admiral Tarkhan's fleet was in chaos. Out of his original 500 ships, only 300 remained, and those were scattered across Earth's orbit, desperately trying to avoid the quantum weapons that seemed to ignore their most advanced shields. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are launching something new from their lunar bases." On the main screen, small objects streaked out from the moon's surface. They looked almost like missiles, but they moved in ways that defied physics, changing direction instantly without slowing down. "Evasive action," Tarkhan ordered, but it was too late. The objects didn't explode. Instead, they attached themselves to the hulls of his ships. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship's systems began to shut down. "Admiral," his engineer screamed through the comm, "our power cores, they're being drained. Something is pulling the energy right out of them." In the UN command center, Dr. Patel explained to the leaders as they watched, "Those are our energy leeches. They don't just drain power, they convert it and send it directly to our ships through quantum tunneling." General Roberts nodded. "Show them what we can do with their own power." The human ships that had emerged from the oceans suddenly lit up with new energy. The stolen power from the Imperial vessels flowed into them, making them even stronger. They moved faster, their weapons hit harder, and their strange hull materials became even more difficult for Imperial sensors to detect. "This is impossible," Tarkhan muttered, watching his mighty fleet being dismantled by technology he couldn't even understand. No species develops like this. Everyone follows the same technological path. That was the Empire's mistake. They assumed all civilizations would develop technology the same way they had. They never imagined that humanity, isolated on their single world, would look at physics differently and find paths to advancement that no one else had considered. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "we're detecting new energy signatures from Earth's poles." Massive rings of strange metal rose from hidden bases in the Arctic and Antarctic. They began to spin, creating a field of energy that enveloped the entire planet. "What are they doing now?" Sarkhan demanded. The answer came soon enough. The quantum weapons that had been picking off his ships one by one suddenly doubled in power. The energy field was somehow amplifying them, using the Earth's magnetic field in ways the Empire's scientists had never thought possible. More Imperial ships vanished, their quantum structure scattered across dimensions. Others found their power completely drained, drifting helplessly in space. In the command center, one of the world leaders asked, "Should we show them our gravity weapons?" General Roberts shook his head. "No need. They've seen enough to understand. Now it's time for the final message." Dr. Patel typed quickly at her console, sending a transmission to the remaining Imperial ships. "Your invasion force has been neutralized using only our defensive systems. We have weapons that could destroy your entire fleet in seconds. Leave our solar system now, and tell your empire what you found here." On his flagship, Admiral Sarkhan received the message. He looked at his tactical display. More than half his fleet was gone, and the rest were either powerless or severely damaged. And according to the humans, this was just their defensive capability. "Send the retreat signal," he ordered quietly. "Get us out of here." As the remaining Imperial ships fled, humanity's true power was finally revealed to the galaxy. They hadn't developed technology to match the Empire. They had developed something entirely different, something that made the Empire's greatest weapons look primitive in comparison. Earth had just announced its presence to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same. As his damaged flagship limped through hyperspace, Admiral Sarkhan sat alone in his command room, watching recordings of the battle. After 300 years of military service, he had never seen anything like what happened at Earth. A junior officer entered nervously. "Sir, Imperial High Command is requesting your report." "Show me," Sarkhan said quietly. The holographic image of the Imperial Council appeared. 5 of the Empire's highest-ranking leaders looked down at him with their multiple eyes, their golden facial markings showing their ancient lineages. "Explain this disaster," the head counselor demanded. Sarkhan stood straight. "The humans, they're not what we thought they were. They've been watching us, studying us, preparing for us." He played the battle recordings. The council watched in silence as Earth's defensive systems activated, as human ships emerged from their hidden bases, as Imperial vessels vanished under weapons that defied understanding. "How is this possible?" one counselor asked. "Their visible technology is centuries behind ours. That's what they wanted us to think." Sarkhan replied. "What we saw on their planet, their primitive satellites, their simple space stations, it was all a deception." He showed them more footage, the quantum weapons that ignored Imperial shields, the energy-draining devices that stole power from their ships, the strange materials that confused their sensors. "They didn't try to copy our technology," he explained. "They created their own. They saw how we developed, how every other species developed, and they chose a different path." In his private chambers on the Imperial capital, the head counselor leaned forward. "How long have they been preparing?" "Based on their level of advancement, decades at least, maybe longer." Sarkhan pulled up more data. They'd been detecting and studying alien civilizations for generations, learning from a distance, developing countermeasures for technologies they hadn't even encountered yet. "But why hide?" another counselor asked. "Why pretend to be primitive?" "Because they were smart," Sarkhan said bitterly. "They knew that if they showed their true capabilities, they would become a target. Instead, they waited, watched, and prepared. When we arrived thinking they were primitive, they were ready for us. The council chamber fell silent as the truth sank in. Humanity hadn't developed slowly. They had developed in secret, choosing their own path instead of following the standard progression of technology that every other known species had taken. "There's more," Kaxarkan added. "They claimed what we saw was only their defensive capability. They say they have weapons that could have destroyed the entire fleet instantly." "Do you believe them?" the head counselor asked. "After what I saw, yes." Sarkhan straightened his uniform. "They let some of our ships escape on purpose. They wanted us to bring this message back." The council members looked at each other nervously. In 10,000 years of imperial history, they had never encountered a species like this, one that had anticipated their arrival and prepared specifically to counter their technology. "We lost half our invasion fleet to their defensive systems alone," Sarkhan concluded. "If they decide to show us their offensive capabilities—" He didn't need to finish the thought. The council understood. The Empire had stumbled upon something unprecedented. A civilization that had chosen isolation not out of weakness, but as a strategy. A species that had turned paranoia into preparation and secrecy into strength. In the silence that followed, one truth became clear. The Empire's assumptions about primitive worlds would never be the same. Humanity had changed everything. And this was just the beginning. 1 week after the failed invasion, the Imperial Council received an unexpected transmission from Earth. The message arrived simultaneously at every Imperial communication center across the galaxy, demonstrating yet again humanity's surprising mastery of the Empire's technology. In the Grand Council chamber, the leaders of the Empire gathered to watch the transmission. Admiral Xarkan stood among them, still recovering from his defeat. A human appeared on the giant holographic screen, General Roberts, standing in the UN Command Center. When he spoke, it was in perfect Imperial language. "Greetings, Imperial Council. We trust Admiral Xarkan has shared his experience with you. Now we would like to share something else, a proposal." The transmission switched to show detailed schematics of every weapon and defense system humanity had used against the invasion fleet. But these weren't just demonstrations. They were complete technical documents, explaining exactly how each technology worked. "As you can see," General Roberts continued, "we developed our technology along very different lines than the Empire. We never tried to match your advancements. Instead, we found our own path." Dr. Patel appeared next to him. "Your civilization mastered energy weapons and shield technology. We explored quantum mechanics and dimensional physics. You focused on powerful engines. We studied gravity manipulation. You built bigger ships. We developed smarter ones." The council watched in amazement as the humans explained each innovation. Technologies that had seemed impossible a week ago now made perfect sense. They were just based on completely different scientific principles. "We could continue our isolation," General Roberts said. "We could remain hidden, developing more technologies you've never imagined. Or," he paused, letting the moment hang in the air, "or we could work together." The head counselor leaned forward. "Work together, after we tried to conquer your world?" "Yes," Roberts replied simply. "Because you've learned what we can do when we think you're enemies. Imagine what we could accomplish as allies." Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Our quantum technology combined with your energy mastery, our dimensional physics adding to your shield systems, your experience across the galaxy merged with our unique perspective. We could advance both our civilizations in ways neither could achieve alone." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some members argued for immediate war, wanting to crush this upstart species before they grew stronger. Others saw the opportunity being offered. Admiral Xarkan finally spoke up. "I faced their defensive weapons. I saw what they can do. And they say they have much more they haven't shown us." He looked at each council member. "Do we want them as enemies or allies?" The head counselor raised his hand for silence. "You offer alliance after we threatened your world. Why?" General Roberts smiled. Because that's what humans do. We prepare for the worst but hope for the best. We built weapons to defend ourselves, but we'd rather use our knowledge to build something greater. The transmission ended with a simple message. The choice is yours. War, which could cost both our civilizations dearly, or partnership, which could benefit us all. We await your response. In the council chamber, the Empire's leaders faced a decision unlike any in their history. They had discovered not just another world, but a civilization that had evolved differently, fought differently, and achieved things they had believed impossible. The Empire had sought to conquer Earth. Instead, they found equals, perhaps even superiors in some ways. Now they had to choose: cling to their pride and risk destruction, or embrace change and step into a new era. The future of both civilizations hung in the balance, and humanity had already proven they were ready for whatever choice the Empire made.